In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
I'm Bill Dries with the Daily Memphian. We record this Tuesday, August 13th, 2024. We are joined by State Representative Gloria Johnson of Knoxville, who is the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate seat on the November 5th ballot, and this is on the record. Representative Johnson claimed the Democratic nomination in the August 1st statewide primary in a four-way race and faces incumbent Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn on the November 5th ballot. Representative, first of all, you're campaigning across the state. Where are you at as we record this?
Well, as I record this, I am in Knoxville, but getting ready to get on the road in the next hour.
Okay. All right. To what extent do you think that this Senate race reflects the larger national race for president? Or vice versa, I guess.
Well, I think that there's always an effect, and we know that in a presidential, we have more folks getting out to vote. I'd like to see that many folks go to the poll every time, but we do know that we have an increase in voters turning out in the presidential race. I've seen more excitement across the state about this election year than I've ever seen before. And it's so energizing and exciting that people are really just chomping at the bit to go and vote.
And we've also seen, of course, a historic change at the top of the Democratic ticket for a president. Has that changed the dynamics of your race? Do you think that Tennessee voters are looking at the entire political landscape differently as a result?
I think some voters are. I think that people were excited about Biden, and I saw that as I traveled all 95 counties. But I also see that there's a renewed energy for Vice President Harris at the top of the ticket, and I think it's a lot of engagement with younger folks and just an overall excitement at what is happening, and also just to see someone at the top of the ticket that really cares about everybody. We don't always see that. We see a lot of negative politics, especially from my colleagues across the aisle. That's just a fact. And it is so nice to see joyful warriors that want to go out and fight for the middle class. And I am so happy to join them in that fight, because that's what Tennesseans so desperately need. We haven't had anyone in the U.S. Senate working for regular Tennessee families. The folks we've got there now work for the wealthy and well-connected and lobbyists and corporations. And we need people that are getting things done for regular, hardworking Tennessee families.
As you probably know, Senator Blackburn has been talking about you as her general election opponent starting way before the August primary results were in. She's called you a socialist, a radical, and has linked you to the Biden administration. What do you say to that? And do you think that has any traction in a state that is for since 2000 in presidential elections has been a red state?
Well, it's been a non-voting state, and that's what we're going to see is more and more people coming out. And the demographics have changed since 2018, and she ran before. They've called me those names. They've called me socialist, communist, Marxist. Those words have definitions, and I'm not any of those things. They can continue to call names like that, but that's not who I am. And the people of Tennessee know who I am, and they know that I'm fighting for them. So those things are not going to work. Lying to the people of Tennessee is not going to bode well for Senator Blackburn. It is time that Tennesseans had people tell them the truth, and that had people fighting to give power back to the middle class instead of ensuring that the power stays with the wealthy and the corporations.
Do you think that you and Senator Blackburn will have a debate or a set of debates before Election Day in November?
I absolutely hope that we do have debates because the people deserve to hear from their representation about the policies they care about. You know, that's one thing. They can call me radical if they choose, but all the things that I care about deeply are favored by Republicans, Democrats, and independents in Tennessee. In Tennessee, overwhelmingly, the majority of Tennesseans of all parties want Medicaid expansion. They want to be able to afford prescription drugs. Marsha Blackburn voted against negotiating drug prices for seniors. She voted against capping insulin at $35. She voted against the ACA that gave 40 million people access to health insurance and affordable care. She wants to take that away. She wants to take away when we hardly, some people can't even remember a time when we couldn't get insurance because of a pre-existing condition. The ACA did away with that. They want to bring that back, keeping your kids on their insurance until they're 26. They want to repeal that, and they have no plan to replace it. Majority of Tennesseans want Medicaid expansion. The majority of Tennesseans want gun sense legislation. All parties, urban, rural, and suburban. More than 70%, almost 80% in some instances, want gun sense legislation like universal background checks, safe storage laws, things like that. Overwhelmingly, Tennessee wants. They want abortion care at some level. Everybody doesn't agree on where what that level is, but even MAGA Republicans believe in exceptions for life of the mother and rape and incest. And we don't have those fully in Tennessee. And so they're the extremists. They're going against 70 to 80% of the constituency of Tennessee.
Are some of those issues, though, that you outlined as the relevant issues in this race, are some of those issues that are for states to settle, that state legislators have to weigh in on?
Well, that state legislators do weigh in on them, but what you have to understand is everything we visit in the state level, it's also at the federal level. There are things that we can do to protect women when it comes to their reproductive health care. There are laws we can pass at the federal level that will make it easier for women to access the care they need and to safely carry a pregnancy. And there are laws that we can pass at the federal level for gun violence. There are laws we can pass at the federal level for prescription drugs. There are another big one is education. There are laws we can pass at the federal level that help our states do better with education. And Marsha Blackburn wants to get rid of the Federal Department of Education, which funds free and reduced lunches and breakfasts. It funds special ed services. It funds equity in all of our schools, regardless of their zip codes. These are things she wants to get rid of. We've got a scary possibility at the top of the Republican ticket. We have someone who has been adjudicated as a sexual assaulter, someone who is convicted of 34 felonies. And at the VP slot, we've got a guy who believes a woman should stay with her abuser, believes in a federal abortion ban, and believes that women who don't have children should have less say in our society. And then you've got Marsha Blackburn, who voted against the Violence Against Women Act, who believes in a federal abortion ban, and is even questioning and voting against our right to contraception and IVF. This is not who the majority of Tennesseans want. Marsha Blackburn is the radical here.
Senator Blackburn has talked a lot about immigration. She has called for the U.S. southern border with Mexico to be closed and has said, quote, every state is a border state. Is illegal immigration a problem, and is illegal immigration a part of the crime problem from your perspective?
Illegal immigration is a problem. We have got to get a solution for the border. But the funny thing is they keep saying there's a problem at the border, but they refuse to vote on legislation that is a majority of the things that they want, just to keep it open as an issue for this election. They are putting politics before people. If that were the case, if they really believed it was such a severe problem, they would have voted for the bipartisan border bill. That's what they would have done if they really believed this is a problem. Now, what we know about crime and immigrants is immigrants commit far less crime than American citizens do. I hear a lot of lies and distortions coming from Senator Blackburn on this issue. We absolutely need to address the situation at the border, and we had a great bill that was extremely bipartisan to do this, and they refused to vote for it because Donald Trump told them not to vote for it, and they do what he says.
When you talk to Democrats and independents and Republicans, because this is a general election campaign, how wide do you think the partisan divide is among the voters, among the folks who are coming out to see you and coming out to see Senator Blackburn and try to make up their mind on this?
Well, what I can tell you is how many Republicans and independents show up to our campaign. That's what I can tell you. And I always ask, whenever somebody comes and says, I'm a lifelong Republican, I'm voting for you, or you're the first Democrat I've donated to, I always ask them what brought them to our campaign. And every single time, almost, it was the Dobbs decision or gun violence. Now, I often also hear it's the hatefulness and divisiveness of my party. I can't stand it. That's something we hear as well. So we are getting people all the time who are Republicans and who are independents. And I'm pretty certain that is the reason when, among women especially, when Vanderbilt polled women, I'm beating Marsha Blackburn 49 to 40%. Because women do not like being told they are second-class citizens and their lives don't matter. And with that top of the ticket on the other side of the aisle, women and girls are at risk in Tennessee. They're in danger from receiving the care they need. If you're talking about forcing a 10-year-old to carry a pregnancy from a rapist, and that 10-year-old may not be anywhere near an OBGYN or a hospital that delivers or a hospital at all, you're putting that child at grave risk. And we know that more than 1/3 of Tennessee has no OBGYN, and more than that also have no delivery room. And since the Dobbs decision, we've seen a 21% decrease in the number of doctors coming here to do their residency in OBGYN. That means as the years go by, we're going to have fewer OBGYNs in Tennessee, because what we know about residents is they typically, the majority of residents stay where they do their residency. And if we're seeing this massive drop of OBGYNs coming here because they can't get the full practice they need to be certified as an OBGYN, women in Tennessee are going to be in dire straits in a few years.
You were in Memphis on election night earlier this month. Talk a bit about how important the state's biggest blue county is to your race, with the city here making up the Democratic majority, but the suburbs outside the city being reliably Republican, and in fact the largest count of Republican voters for any single county in the state as well.
Well, you know, what I found in Memphis were a lot of people eager for change. And we spent a lot of time in Memphis just because people were so welcoming and so engaging and wanting to know how to help, how to volunteer. And in those suburbs outside of Memphis, that's where I found so many Republicans ready to come over to our campaign. And so certainly Memphis is important. Our cities are important, but our rural counties are equally as important, because every time I went to a rural county, we've gone to, I think, 87 so far. We're going to finish out in the next week or two the rest of the counties. But every time we went to those rural counties, they said, thank you so much for coming to our county. No one ever comes here. They need to be heard as well. Rural counties, I hear a lot of elected officials, especially on the other side of the aisle, talk about rural counties, but they're not talking to rural counties. And that's important. We have a lot of infrastructure money that we could be using to bring industry to some of these rural counties who so desperately need. Some of the young people that I've talked to in rural counties, they talk about going off to college, and when they love their town so much, they want to come back to their town and work, but there's just nothing there that they can do with their degree, and so they have to go somewhere else. So I say we use some of this infrastructure money that the Democrats and President Biden brought to Tennessee, and bring in some of this good paying jobs, green energy jobs into our rural and urban areas that are underserved, and lift all the people of Tennessee up, just not the few that are being paid attention to today.
During one of the times that you were here, we talked a little bit, very briefly, about the battleground states and how much the national campaign, how much resources are going there for Republicans as well as Democrats. And what I wonder about is whether the change to from Biden to Harris has signaled that some states may be in play that maybe weren't considered to be in play before. What do you think about that?
Well, it's really hard to tell. The one thing that I just pay attention to what I see on the ground. That's always the kind of politician I've been. I'm a grassroots person. I talk to people on the ground. And I can tell you this, as I've traveled these 95 counties, I see 1/5 to 1/10 of the number of Trump signs I saw 4 years ago. I mean, I drove through 3 counties one day and only saw 2 Trump signs. There is something happening. It may not be spoken, but there's definitely something happening out there. And you can feel it when you've got Republicans and independents coming to your events in rural counties. But this was even when President Biden was the candidate as well. Mm-hmm. People are feeling they want change. They're feeling left out, left behind, and their voices aren't being heard, and they want something different. And I think that we're going to see amazing results out of places you never imagined. That's just what I feel from being on the ground 24/7.
All right. Let's talk a little bit about the legislature. Democrats have a plan to flip some Republican seats in the Tennessee legislature over the next 3 elections, this one, 2026 and 2028. The goal there being to reduce the Republican supermajority in the state House. What do you think about those efforts? How safe or unsafe is the Republican supermajority where you work?
Well, I know that we are going to flip some seats. That's not in question. I think they know it too. We should probably write them thank you notes for all of their overreach and all of their authoritarianism and everything that the Tennessee public has now seen. I mean, it's just remarkable to me that they don't understand how they're losing favorability and how people have seen that they're not working for them. They're working for lobbyists. They're not working for even the Republicans that voted for them in the most part. They're far more extreme than the Republicans in my neighborhood and out in other neighborhoods. They have totally misjudged in their attempt to be authoritarians and tell everyone how to live their life, what medical procedures they can have, what books they can read. This whole thing about book banning, there's never been pornography in our schools. That's a lie. And they're talking about books that were never in Tennessee schools. And so, people know they're being gaslighted. They know they've been lied to. And so we should almost send flowers to the Republican Party for their overreach and for showing the Tennessee people who they are And I think they're going to feel it in this vote. And yes, I think we'll flip seats, and we'll flip seats for the next few cycles because people are fed up. They're trying to shove vouchers down people's throat that do not want them, and they're going to find out.
Okay. Final point about Democratic identity. Is it hard for Democrats to be as homogenous as Republicans have tended to be for the last 4 to 8 years on the full gamut of issues?
I think that what I see is Democrats have always, I mean, I've been at the legislature a while, and not super long. It's not one of those long political careers like people like to say it is. But what I've seen is Democrats fighting for the same thing, for people to have access to affordable health care, for our kids to have a great education, to invest in our public schools, not defund them, which the supermajority is doing now. I've seen Democrats who want to create good, well-paying jobs for families so they're not working 2 or 3 jobs trying to keep the lights on and afford prescription drugs for their family. Democrats have been fighting for those things for Tennesseans ever since I have been around. And that's not going to change. We're going to continue to fight for things like paid family leave and child care infrastructure. Those are the things that we need to lift up everyday families so that they can afford the higher cost of living. And we're also at the federal level, we're going to look at the way the grocery stores are gouging citizens on raising the price of groceries. That's not inflation, that's greedflation. Those are the things Democrats care about, the things that lift up the middle class. Because what we know is more people with money in their pockets, with the middle class, with 1 million people shopping at Target, the economy does so much better than having 100 people shopping at Tiffany's or buying yachts. Mm-hmm. It's money in the pockets of the middle class that lift our economy.
To that point, what do you hear about inflation? I mean, is inflation the incumbents' vulnerability, whether they're Democratic or Republican, when the economy is doing what it's doing now, which is sending very mixed signals?
Well, the economy is what we have problems is with this increased price of groceries. But here's the thing. The biggest problem, the reason we're in this situation is because wages haven't increased. Senator Blackburn likes the $7.25 minimum wage. She has no interest in raising that wage. You cannot survive on $7.25 an hour. You can't do it. Even if you're making $10 an hour, how do you afford $15 an hour daycare if you make $10 an hour? None of this is making sense. But if people had had affordable health care, if they had a higher wage, if they had a good job with good benefits so they could retire in dignity, prices rising every year as they always do. We don't see prices drop every year. As you look at the line through history, they always show this rising line. Well, of course it rises. Cost of living increases every year. We know that. But what is happening are wages and benefits and healthcare costs, and all of those things are not getting better. And so if we improve those things, people are able to afford those cost of living increases. But yes, at the same time, we've got to look at what some of these corporations are doing in making record profits for those at the top, but overcharging for things that have nothing to do with inflation.
All right. That's where we will leave it for now. We have been talking with State Representative Gloria Johnson of Knoxville, the Democratic nominee for the U.S. Senate seat on the November 5th ballot. Early voting starts in mid-October. I'm Bill Dries for the Daily Memphian. This has been On the Record.